So this is a video about how filmmakers use setting to show the transformation, the change of their protagonist hero. And the three case studies we're going to look at are Hunger Games, Finding Nemo, and A Never Ending Story. This is a typical graphic of the hero's journey, clockwise. You can see that the hero starts at the top, and he goes from a known world into an unknown world. And not always, but ordinarily, the beginning and the end have the same setting. It's going to be the same place, right? So if you think about your favorite movies, a lot of times the hero begins and ends, or the protagonist begins and ends at the same. So we're just going to get rid of the rest of that junk, get rid of the rest of the noise on that graph, and we're just going to have a circle. And we are going to work clockwise from beginning to end. Ordinarily, our beginning starts with what's called the ordinary world. Things are out of whack, they're disorderly, they're chaotic, they're not the way they should be, or they could be ordinary or boring. The ordinary world is also unsatisfying some way. There's some kind of brokenness in the world of the hero. There's a need that needs to be filled, and by the time we get to the end, chaotic things are made orderly. Things are as they should be. Something is learned, earned, or gained by the protagonist, and almost always there's some kind of growth or transformation. And so the name of the game in the hero's journey is transformation. For the most part, the hero changes and grows. Um, so, in our first case study in the Hunger Games, we'll look at Katniss, who begins in District 12 in her ordinary world, and then she spends most of her journey in an unknown, unfamiliar world called called the Capital, which is the New World, and then she makes her way back to District 12. So the setting in the beginning and the end of Hunger Games is District 12, but she spends most of her time outside of her ordinary world in this place called the Capital. In Finding Nemo, we start in the anemone and we end in the anemone and then Nemo goes to school. But most of the time is Marlin and Nemo away from home in the open sea and the ocean. And Bastian has an interesting case because really, physically speaking, he hasn't left his zip code, he hasn't left his neighborhood, but by opening the book, he does enter his new world. So his ordinary world is just the boring, unsatisfying, crappy dad. He's getting yelled at for just having an imagination, but he finds this book in a bookstore, and he enters Fantasia. He enters the world of Fantasia, and then he returns home after his journey in Fantasia. So let's go back to Katniss. In the beginning, Katniss's world is out of whack because the government has all the power over the people, and the games seem insurmountable. Everyone is pretty clear that District 12 is not going to have a winner because they haven't had one for years. Um, Everything seems helpless and completely hopeless. District 12, out of all 12 districts, has the least amount of food, the least amount of opportunity and hope for winning the games, and Katniss lives at home. But by the end, in the same setting, when she gets back home, the people have some power over the government. And this was accomplished when Katniss and Peeta decide to eat the poison berries and kill themselves. In which case, had they done that, then the games would have been defeated because they wouldn't have had their one victor, and the games would have been turned on their heads. So by Katniss and Peeta threatening this end to the games, the government had to acquiesce a little bit. So Katniss learned that the games can be won, that the Capitol does have some weakness. Katniss went from being hopeless and helpless to having empowered herself. They did gain something. The district gained food and was called Tesserae. And so by the time she gets back to District 12 is in a better place than when they started. And Katniss no longer lives at home. She lives in a victor's village. So she starts in District 12 in chaos, and she returns to District 12 with a little more order, but because this is dystopian, it's not exactly a happy ending because they're still living in this awful economy with the games. In Finding Nemo, we begin in the anemone, where Marlin is scared. He's untrusting. He thinks the ocean is a dangerous place, which it is because it killed his wife and his children, I guess. But he's not allowing Nemo to grow because he's trying to teach he not trying to, but he inadvertently teaches him to be hesitant about the world. The world can be a dangerous place, and so in the beginning of the anemone, he says we go in, we swim out, we swim it out, we swim in, we swim out, look around. The world's a dangerous place. And Nemo wakes his dad up for school because Nemo's the adventurous one. In the beginning, the ocean is an unknown place that Marlin thinks should be feared. By the end, Marlin does trust Nemo, so he goes from not trusting Nemo to trusting Nemo. Nemo has grown. Um, Now this time, instead of Nemo waking his dad to go to school, the dad wakes Nemo, as it should be. So order is restored because the dad, instead of being freaked out, is now doing his job as dad, waking up the kid. And the ocean is no longer the scary place. It went from being an unknown to a known. So they know the turtles are going to be your friends, the sharks are not. The seagulls are going to try to kill you, but this type of fish is not. So all the things that used to be scary aren't so scary anymore because they've gone through it. Kind of like the same way Katniss, after having gone through the games, she's a little more confident going into um, the 75th Hunger Games. So the next book and movie, she has a level of confidence she didn't have the first time around. And so Bastion, his unsatisfying world is that he's being bullied. His dad tells him to stop sinking into his imagination. He misses his mother. He doesn't know his true self, right? He doesn't. He's kind of bored and unsatisfied. And by the end, there's a great scene where instead of the bullies throwing Bastion in the dumpster, Falcor and Bastion actually throw the bullies in the dumpster. The same setting from the beginning to the end, but order has been restored to Bastion's world. Um, Bastion has fully explored his imagination in this book. In Fantasia, he's reconnected with his mother in a way by yelling her name out, Moonchild, and he knows his true self, and his true self is Atreyu, the child warrior. So he went from being just a kid that gets beat up, um, unsatisfying life, pretty crappy dad, to being a child warrior who is able to defeat the nothing. And he defeats the nothing by being able to use his imagination to recreate Fantasia and win. So Katniss goes from just a kind of like um, bummed out, but she's a hunter. She hunts squirrels and she goes to hunting the capital. She becomes the Mockingjay. She transforms, um, and Nemo transforms, and his dad transformed from being kind of how should I say, not ordinary, but um, sheltered a little. To they transform into two fish that have learned what the ocean is and how it's not to be feared, even though um, the barracuda killed mom. And then Bastion goes from having a life of not much going on to being this kind of victorious um, child warrior Atreyu. So he brings Falcor um, back to his home, full circle, going all the way back in order to um, he has learned something in order to kind of grow and mature and transform.